G'day, my name's Anthony, and if you're new to the channel, let me get you caught up.
Around the year of 2020, I decided to pursue the noble hobby of woodworking in a more serious way. So I built a workshop, I built my first workbench, built another workbench, built some storage, made a router table, made a wheelie thing, fell in love with form ply, made stuff that sucks, made stuff that doesn't suck, made a pool table, played with lasers, nearly set my workshop on fire, and finally I mowed the lawn. You're welcome, Werner.
Right, so now that you're basically caught up, many of you will know that over the course of the last few months, I've been on a bit of a mission to redo my home office. That space is a complete mess. It needs a complete redo. It needs a new desk, new storage, new cabinets, new shelving, new bookshelves, more storage, the whole 9 yards. And it was in part 1 of this series that I kick-started the project by building the first 2 cabinets of my new desk build. I'm now standing behind the 3rd cabinet, which I've just finished and is the final cabinet for the desk. So let me take you on a quick tour of this cabinet build and then talk a little bit about the next phase in this project. So very quickly, this is cabinet number 3. I didn't film building this specifically because it was identical to the first 2 cabinets. The major differentiation being the size. So obviously those first 2 cabinets were single cabinets, and this is a double cabinet. So in terms of width, it's basically 2 of those cabinets double width. So in terms of construction, it was identical, just a little bit wider, and we've got a center divider in between here. The other thing we've continued is to, obviously for the drawer fronts, we've gone with matching the timber grain in each direction. So when we stand back, we have continuous grain following. So this is all Tassie oak. And there's some interesting different colors in here. So there's a strip in here that's quite significantly darker. Got some lighter tones, got a little bit of sap in there. So I've left that in there because I kind of like that feature. And some nice streaks. And then obviously some very light bits. So Tassie oak as a timber can vary significantly in its tones, its colors and things like that. So some people love that, some people don't love that. I like that it's not symmetrical or not consistent, that it has these different colors, but you know, each to their own. The other thing I've continued is the drawer pulls are all 3D printed. So again, these are actually 3D printed. And as a quick reminder, I did get these priced up in an aluminium drawer pull. They looked almost identical, pretty much just a bit that sits on top of a drawer face. And they were coming out to be around $20, $30 each. So once, you know, I needed 16 odd, it was going to get very expensive. So 3D printed in a matte black. If I stand back, you wouldn't even be able to tell that those are 3D printed. Most of the people that have seen this in person don't realize it's actually 3D printed. So even up close, you wouldn't be able to tell that these are 3D printed. So other than that, that's the cabinet. So we're going to move on to the top now. So the top's a little bit trickier. So I'll go into more detail about what we're going to do for that.
Right, so let's talk about the tabletop. The top is going to need to span the full length of my office, which is about 3.2 meters, or if you prefer, about 10.5 feet in the freedom units. Now, unfortunately, I can't just buy a panel that size from a big box, and making one that length will be tricky in my space. Not impossible, but I don't really have enough clamps to be doing that. In addition, I'm going to paint this, so it makes a lot of sense just to join 2 panels together, and that's what I have here. Since I'll be painting these, I've just opted for some inexpensive 2.2 meter pine panels that I'll cut in the appropriate spot and then join together. Now, one of the panels will need a precise and clean 90-degree cut here. I can't cut this on my table saw, the panel's just far too wide, and my Craig AccuCut Track-saw guide is not really up to the task of getting me that super fine cut I need here. So it's finally time and the perfect excuse to at long last purchase a Track-saw. Given I've already started getting into the Bosch battery platform and I really wanted a cordless one, I opted for the Bosch cordless Track-saw. So after carefully measuring how far I need to come in from the end, and then putting some support blocks underneath so I didn't cut into my bench, I proceeded to carefully make my very first ever dedicated track saw cut. It was at this point I was feeling pretty confident and pretty pleased with myself.
Oh my god.
That was, of course, until I checked for square.
What did I do there? I don't know how I did that. I generally pride myself in being pretty accurate and triple checking. I should have double checked that one. I don't know how it slipped through, but what I've done is I've measured 1065 to this end and then 1055 to that end. So 10 millimeters out. I don't know how I've done that, and I don't know how it slipped my brain. It's not the fault of the track-saw in any capacity whatsoever. If anything, the track-saw performed amazing. I did that first cut, or was cutting through, and there was just that moment where I suddenly realized I get it. I completely get it that there are people who say, look, I don't need a table saw. I can absolutely get away with just using a track saw. And I 100% get it now. You know, I've had the AccuCut, the Craig AccuCut, since basically the start, and it's performed admirably, and it allowed me to do a lot of things. So, you know, I used it a lot. But I get it now. Like, I get what a proper, sorry, Craig, I get what a good track saw can do. So I'm completely sold on it, you know, completely appreciate it and completely get it now. Really, really happy with the Bosch. And let's not get too excited here. I've cut a bit of pine, right? We've cut a bit of pine with nothing exotic and certainly nothing dense, and it should cut it really well, right? I'll probably need to get some sort of right angle adapter for the track and get a smaller track as well. But right angle adapter for the track, I feel like if I had had that, I would have caught this mistake, because obviously once I'd try to line it up, it just wouldn't line up because obviously, you know, it's not right angled. I'll look at doing that. I'm sure there's some sort of one that you can buy or maybe even print, I have no idea. But I'll look in doing that. But to fix this, so we are short by 10 millimeters, which is, you know, not the end of the world. We can live with that, and I could work around that, and that would just make one end of the desk a little tiny bit shorter. But that'll annoy me. The OCD in me will say that's not good enough. So I think what we'll do is recut this one. So this one I'll recut from that end to here to get the right measurement, and I might clean this one up just so it's not a horrible non-right angle if and when I use this piece in the future. So luckily this is a very long piece and we've got plenty of meat on it to fix this mistake, but still very annoying, but we'll treat it as a learning curve. So let's go ahead and fix that up.
Right, so let's try that again. Take two. And checking for square, we can breathe a sigh of relief. So with the panel cut, I now need to begin the process of joining the two panels together. Now to do this, I'm going to simply butt join them together. I'm going to use dominoes for alignment and for a little bit of lateral strength, and pocket holes to pull the join together. Now before you all run to the comments, I fully understand that this is not the strongest way to do this. That's why when working out where this join will be, I'm making sure that it sits over one of the cabinets and is supported on each side of the join. This will ensure there is little to almost no load directly on the join, and while I'm pretty confident it will be able to take some load, it's of course better to be safe than sorry. Hopefully this will pull the joins in. Oh, yes, 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 yes.
Okay, if that looks stressful, it's because it was, but we've got a fairly good result here. So the pocket holes did a really good job of pulling in the join and getting them to close up. So they're not there for strength, they're purely were there for clamping. So right now they're there for clamping. The glue will do the job. The dominoes will help a little bit as well. We've got a nice tight seam here. We've got a tiny little bit of gap here. We'll fix it up, sand it, etc. You won't even know it's there. We've got a really good flat top here, so no gaps, so I'm happy with the alignment. So the dominoes really help in that area. This method is not something you'd use for strength. So if there was going to be any load on that seam at all, this is not the way to do it. You'd do another method. But there's going to be cabinets in this gap here. Okay, so this seam will take zero load. There will be no load. The cabinets will effectively take the load on each side of the seam here. So there is no risk that this is going to break. However, if you were doing a desk and you needed to go, lengthwise, and you knew that there was going to be load in that middle area, you just wouldn't do it this way. There'd be other ways which to do it, but this is just the way I'm going to do it for this, because I know for a fact that there's going to be support underneath. Right, so the next thing is to let this dry and then come back for the next steps.
So after a few hours, I came back and did some quick light sanding, mostly to knock out any glue squeeze out that might have crept out on the seam. This was just an initial sanding pass at I think 120, and I'll come back later on to do a little bit more. I also decided that I'd plug the pocket screw holes. It was probably not necessary since they're on the underside and you can't see that, but I figured, why not? Might as well be thorough. Then after that, it's a bit more sanding while I had the panel in this position. Now, I've mentioned my right angle sanding attachment that I designed for my Bosch finish sander a few times, but it's really handy and it's great for this type of application where I want to make sure that I keep perpendicular to the top. I have digital files on my website and I've recently started printing these for people as well. So if you're interested, I'll leave a link in the description below. And of course, as always, thanks for your support. I thought it might be a cool idea to put in some LED lighting that will go underneath the top near the front of the desk. I found an LED kit at Bunnings for a reasonable price and decided what better way to test the depth setting on the Track-saw than make a channel to accept the LED. While this certainly worked and I learned a bit more about the Track-saw through this process, I can safely say it would have been so much faster just to use a router. Next come the holes for the desk grommets, which will allow for some cable management. I need to cut a bunch of 61mm holes at the rear, and the easiest way is to whip up a quick template on the laser and then use a Forstner bit to hog out some of the material and come back with a flush trim bit. This was a bit of a hard slog with this trim bit. It was quite dull, but it's the only one I have that has a bottom bearing rather than a top one. For the other holes, I resorted to using a jigsaw to get as close to the template as I could, and that made the router bit's job a lot easier. I sometimes get a few questions on the double-sided tape that I use. It comes from Daiso, and I love it as it has incredible holding power, and once you remove your template, it comes off really easily without leaving any residue. And the final step before we move on to painting is to include a subtle round over, just a few millimeters on the edges to soften the feel. After a good clean and vacuum to get rid of any dust, it's now time for some paint.
So here we are in location in my garage now. So the board was much too long to paint in the shop. Considering the method I'm going to use completely not the right location to do. So I've moved my cars out of my garage and I have set up shop in here to do the painting. Now, I want to premise this by saying that I don't know much about painting. You know, as a woodworker, we generally spend most of our time trying to show off wood. We don't want to hide it underneath paint. But obviously there are times in which, well, paint's the best thing to use. So you might be asking, well, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I use, you know, a solid timber or a solid, you know, hardwood top and, you know, make it really pretty? But there's two reasons why I've opted to do painting. The first reason is a little bit of cost. To make a panel of hardwood this long, especially in Tassie oak, would have been probably close to $1,000, maybe less, obviously, depending on, you know, sources and things like that. But I would say by the time I'd be done, it would have cost quite a bit of money. The second reason is that we already have a lot of wood in this project. So the cabinets are obviously all solid Tasmanian oak, and they look really good. And I wanted to have something that would sort of counterbalance, or sort of, I didn't want too much wood. I didn't want it starting to look like completely like a log cabin type thing. So I think that paint is the best thing to do here. And most of the people I've polled have all agreed, yes, paint it. The color I'm opting for is actually black. That will match the draw pulls. I wanted a darker theme for my office, so hopefully that will look really good. So a matte black, not shiny black, so a matte black or a flat black, however way it's going to do. The way I'm going to paint it though is potentially controversial, but I'm just going to use spray paint. So I've been told that by people much smarter than I am, that this will work just fine. It's perfect for this application. I'm using this Rust-Oleum matte, super matte black, ultra matte black, sorry. So ultra matte black. I've been told that this will look fine on pine. The one thing that I also was recommended, and I've used this before, and as you can see, is to get a paint spray adapter holder. These are really good because they allow you to control the spray painting. So it should make it a lot easier to apply. I know that with painting, most of it's all in preparation. So I've completely sanded this, completely cleaned it. It should be dust free. I've got the garage door open, so hopefully the fumes are okay. I'm gonna have a fan gently blow across so to push any fumes out there. And yeah, we'll see how we go. So hopefully this looks good. I'm gonna start with the bottom because obviously if it goes south, we can change it, but we'll start with the bottom and fingers crossed this looks good. Well, that's it. That's the first coat on. And that was an entire can. So it still looks a bit wet in certain spots. So that's fine. But overall, it's not looking too bad. It does probably come across much darker than it actually is. It's actually a very, very, very matte black. So I guess ultra matte. And so I think it will make a good contrast to the Tassie oak because that's quite dark, obviously, as well. Now, this is obviously going to need to be sanded, then another coat applied just to smoothen and even it out. But, I mean, so far, I'm not a great painter, but I think it will be okay. So, you know, some of those areas, I think, which I don't know if you can see them on camera, but those areas there, they've obviously just used up a little bit of paint. Now, in terms of the paint, I forgot to mention that it's supposedly a primer slash, primer and, top coat. So allegedly, I didn't need a primer, but I mean, it looks like it's penetrating okay. So I think one more can on the top here once that's dried and sanded a little bit, and then we'll need one coat on the top, and then another one on there. So I'm gonna let this dry, and then hopefully I'm gonna come back with a finished top. So see you on the other side. So after another coat, a quick sand in between, and then 2 more coats, I can honestly say that I think the top came out pretty good.
Painting is certainly not my forte, there's a real art to it, but I think this time I give myself a solid B+. Certainly room for improvement, but I think it still came out pretty good. That obviously meant it was time to clear out the old to make way for the new. The old desk modules you see us removing here actually represent the very first cabinets I ever built. Looking back at these, I know my design aesthetics had a lot to be desired, but I can definitely see the progress I've made as a maker and can't help but feel at least a little bit proud. Now, to give the desktop the illusion that it's sort of floating above the cabinets, I designed and printed some of these, well, I guess you can call them reverse feet. They'll raise the top of the desk to hopefully give that illusion that the top is actually floating above the cabinet. Now, it probably would have been easier to install this prior to putting on the top, but I still managed to apply the LED strip to the channel we cut out earlier. And of course, I couldn't help myself by playing around with some of the different LED lighting options that was possible with this kit. I'm really happy with how this desk has come together. For me, it's a reminder of just what's possible when we take that first step. And honestly, if I can do it, so can you. We recently hit 10,000 subscribers, something I never imagined would happen. I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has ever watched, liked, and subscribed. It means a lot that you've followed me along as I make my way through this incredibly rewarding hobby. A very special thanks to my channel members and an extra shout out to my newest channel member, Bespoke Carvings. Your support truly means the world. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.